You can have a seat, either by Allison or anywhere you'd like. You can be by me if you want. Okay. Are you going to be ready, Novi? Okay. No.
I got a new ring. I mean, I had like a fair one. So this one's different. It was awesome. It was like, it wasn't as. I was gonna say, I got it. My friend the ring. Yeah, that's my exact one.
Okay. Hello and welcome to our 2023 Champion for Change public event. It's so beautiful to be in community with you all today and to celebrate Native youth leadership. Before we get started, I'd like to invite Novi Runsabove to sing a prayer song for us.
Just want to say good day to each and every one of the relatives here, all the champs, the youth that are part of the program, and all of the staff members. For myself, I want to commend all of you for the efforts and the energies that you put forth for the sake of our existence as a people. I always say that we're no better than no one in this world, but for our communities, every day we're fighting for our existence as a people. And so with that, maybe take this time to maybe a meditation state, close your eyes or a deep breath, however, but help make a prayer so that we can continue this good effort, this good energy, and many of your relatives that sent you off to come here, I know that they all prayed and want good things for you, and they believe in you. The youth, you're going to take us far into the future. And so, when the road kind of gets tough, we just want to let you know that there's a lot of people out there, people that you don't even know, that are praying for you, that are thinking of you, that want good things for you. So with that, I just want to ask each and every one of you in your own way to help me along. Thank you, relatives.
Thank you so much, Novi. My name is Nikki. I'm a proud member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, and I have the honor of serving as the executive director for the Center for Native American Youth. We're a program that's within the place called the Aspen Institute, and we're thrilled to have Dan Porterfield, the Institute's president and CEO, join us for opening remarks. Dan has been a great support to this program, and on a personal note, a huge advocate and mentor for my growth. And I'd like to invite Dan Porterfield to the podium now.
Thank you, Nikki, and to our whole team at the Center for Native American Youth for hosting this convening. Now, Nikki, am I right? I know your daughter is here, and is your mom here too?
Right here.
That's your mom. So can we all give thanks to Nikki's mom and Nikki's daughter for giving us Nikki, an incredible leader. I'm so glad that you were able to come today. Thank you. Your daughter is amazing. I'm going to come back to her in a second. One of our greatest board members who passed away last year was named Madeleine Albright, and she was the first woman to serve as the U.S. Secretary of State. She was an immigrant to America from Czechoslovakia, and her family had fled both the Nazis and then later the Soviets, and they started their lives over in the United States. And she said it, one of her many wise comments, she said, "The older I get, the younger my mentors become." And of course, what she meant by that is that all of us who are older have so much to gain and learn from those who are younger, that we exist in reciprocal relationship with one another, and that just as our inner child and our inner youth is still such a part of our identities as we grow older, so too in our adulthood, we capture some access to our inner lives, and we change because we learn about the concerns and the perspectives of the young. And so today we have a chance to recognize 5 of those young leaders whose creativity, whose courage, whose vision, whose perspectives make a difference in this world for among your peers, I know, but also make a big difference for we who are older. Those of us who are older do a lot of teaching. Those who are younger do a lot of learning and dreaming. And together, the teachers, the learners, and the dreamers can make something that neither would make alone. So we're really excited to be able to get to know and learn from and follow the growth of Sam, of Gabriella, of Jovi, of Hanu, and Josh as they embody the Champions for Change program. And you'll always be a champion for change, always be something you can talk about and draw upon. And there'll be growth in your life and new connections, new relationships because of that. I still remember one of our youth leaders from the Center for Native American Youth a few years ago, whose name was Trenton, making a comment one time that really blew me away. It was a panel like this one, and he said that before he got involved in the Center for Native American Youth and some of the activities, he used to think that not voting was an act of rebellion. And he said from the leadership work, the community, that learning from the activism of others and the way people engage, he said he had come to understand that not voting was now an act of surrender. And so he was always going to vote. He was always going to be active. He was always going to use his voice and listen to others. And that sense of growth as a young leader is what this program is all about. And because you're in this program, you know you're going to have influence because you were picked for that influence and to influence our programming and influence the whole country. So it's actually been 3 years since we could do this in person, and it's a lot to be grateful for. Just to be able to be back together in person and to feel a greater sense of personal security together. Even if COVID is not necessarily gone, it's receded, and we have the chance to be present to one another again in person. I thank all of you for that. And in some ways, this is a very exciting time in our society. There's an awful lot of opportunity for inclusivity. It's amazing to have the first Native American cabinet secretary in Washington, D.C. It's amazing to have a White House that is constantly calling up Nikki and saying, "Hey, Nikki Santos, get over here. We need some help." Your influence is growing, and that reflects your work and our work, but it also reflects that there are people calling us that care what we think and what you think, and that matters that we acknowledge that and work with those that would listen so that we can make a difference. You're amazing at the way you do that. More opportunity to uplift and celebrate indigenous culture is, of course, needed. It's a movement, and the more there's movement, the more the movement can build. Young people lead that. We've seen young people across this country on the front lines making positive change. And our Champions for Change are certainly a part of that movement, whether it's in policy change, in community organizing, mental health awareness, community solidarity, writing new narratives, combating old stereotypical narratives, erasure, all of that is incredibly important. And I'm confident that with you leading us, we're going in a good direction. So for 13 years now, Center for Native American Youth has worked always in partnership with young people to advance the lives of Native American youth. And we do that in all sorts of ways, from convenings to reporting, to empowering youth, to working with colleges and universities, with tribal colleges and others, to celebrating the works of creators, to putting art up in our building. Nikki's amazing at working across the other Aspen programs to ensure that young people who want to be involved from CNAY in our work in energy and environment or our work in education have the opportunity to do that. It's been fun to see that come together. We have a big summit that we're doing on the climate crisis and its impacts around the world in Miami Beach. We did it last year, and then this year will be in a couple weeks. And CNAY leadership was really prominent in that summit, which brought together all kinds of leaders, policymakers, business leaders, elected people. The voices of the CNAY were prominent and clearly among the most informed in the room. You know, not only eloquent, but informed. It was like that combination was amazing. So we're so grateful for that not only does CNAY do extraordinary work in the world, which is most important, but it also does great work in the Aspen Institute and makes us a better organization. And even that philosophy of co-creation that Nikki and her team live by, everything's done with young people, in partnership, the agenda set by young people. That philosophy has really, I think, infiltrated much of the Institute now, and so almost all of our youth programming is a little better and a little different because they've learned from the CNAY methodology, which we can never take for granted. We have to do things in partnership together. We have to make sure that young people are driving the agenda. That's what makes the work better, but it's also what makes it authentic, and it's what, if you will, reverses those paradigms of domination or those paradigms of control that we have to reverse if we are to promote a liberatory culture, a free culture. And that paradigm has obviously existed in this country's entire history in relation to indigenous communities. And so the method that you use, that you teach, you spread with others, is itself a radical form of change. And so important. Thank you. So again, congratulations to our Champions of Change. Look forward to learning about your work and hearing from you. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Nikki, unless your daughter would like to take the mic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan. So when I came to Washington, D.C. about 15 years ago, I was told I needed to get a mentor, and I kept hearing the name Allison Benny. Allison is a Sherwood Band of Pomo Indians and is an attorney by trade and has worked with the center since our inception 13 years ago. She's an inspiring Indigenous woman, fierce and fearless, and always puts our young people first. And I'm so honored to be guided by her leadership as the chair of our board of advisors. Please join me in welcoming Allison for some remarks.
Thank you, Nikki. So it's a small world, and I see several friends in here that I haven't seen in a long time, including one of the Champions for Change's mom, who I went to law school with. So it's great to see everybody. As Nikki said, I'm a Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indians member, and that's up in Northern California, because a lot of people have never heard of Pomos. And yes, there are natives up in Northern California still. And I am proud to be the chair of the Board of Advisors for the Center for Native American Youth. I was involved with its inception. It actually started when I worked at the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs for then Senator Byron Dorgan from North Dakota. He was the ranking Democrat and the chairman of the committee. And growing up in North Dakota, and he was very close with the senators from South Dakota, they were experiencing in the early 2000s to the late 2000s, like 2000 to 2010, a series of suicide clusters on their native communities of youth people, Native American youth. And so he wanted to hold hearings on the issue. And as you can imagine, and maybe you can't, because I feel like those of us who are over the age of 50 or at least 40 can imagine this, but I feel like the younger generation is in a completely different mindset. At least back then, it wasn't something you talked about, at least not publicly, and to have hearings on the topic. And then we reached out to tribal leaders, because being a Native person, I grew up in my Native community, and I was like, we should talk to tribal leaders before we just have hearings on these issues. And it took a while for some tribal leaders to be comfortable with us having hearings on them. And then it was like, if we're going to have hearings on these issues, we should have a Native voice at the hearings. It can't just be, I was like an at-risk youth. And so I grew up in a very poor household in my community and had to go through all those issues that just really are just an instance and a result of poverty of anything else. And so I was like, you can't just have adults telling other adults what the issues are and what the solutions are. Like, we need to have a Native voice. And I always really respected that he got that. And so we always had a Native youth testify at our hearings on the issue. But suicide, as you all know, is a multi-realm problem. It's not like there's one issue that creates it. It's usually multiple issues in an environment of everything happening to where a person just feels like there's no other solution than that. And it leaves behind a trail of trauma that lasts at least a generation and sometimes multiple generations. And so trying to solve that issue was something that we weren't able to do. But having the hearings, I think, made us realize that we weren't going to solve the issue. Really, it was youth who were going to solve the issue. And really what the adults needed to do was start listening more to the youth. And what we needed to do was try to create more, I guess, forums for Native youth to communicate with each other and, see, like, not just, connect about, so they knew that there were other Native youth out there suffering, but also connect Native youth who are doing really positive things, and just so that Native youth who are suffering see positive role models. And so when Senator Dorgan decided to retire from the Senate, one of the things he wanted to do was create the Center for Native American Youth, and really wanted to create it because he wanted to make sure that there was a forum focus on Native youth voices. So it's not adults, it's Native youth. And really the goal of the center is to elevate Native youth voices, connect Native youth with each other, and really just have the adults kind of listen and learn from the Native youth and help Native youth navigate what the solutions are. And maybe it's not something that happens in like the first generation, right? As Native people, we always think in multiple generations. So maybe it's the center working with Native youth now, and then those Native youth go on to be leaders. And then once you're leaders, listening to the next generation of Native youth, you then find the solution. And so it's not something that we thought was going to be fixed right away, but that was kind of like the purpose of the Center for Native American Youth. And so in my spare time, in the senator's spare time, we, helped establish the Center for Native American Youth. He picked the Aspen Institute because he wanted a very stable organization that it could be housed at, that he knew he would always be there for support, but more importantly, that there would be resources beyond just Indian country coming into the Center for Native American Youth. And so I do want to thank Dan Porterfield, the president and CEO of Aspen Institute, always been a huge supporter of the center, always a huge supporter of Nikki, and has really made sure that we've had the resources that we've needed to move in the right direction. Them, along with KC Family Programs, also from the beginning have been there for us. And so one of our staple programs that we started right away was the Champions for Change program. And we did that in conjunction with the White House. And really the goal of the Champions for Change program was one of the things when we were in the Senate we realized was we were always focused on suicide, and it's such a hard, depressing issue that we weren't doing enough to elevate the positive. And there's some really amazing things going on in Indian country, right? And so we needed to make sure that the positive things that are going on are also being highlighted and elevated. And so the Champions for Change program was really designed to, one, elevate the positive things that are going on in Indian country and grow them. And so it was focused on selecting, we just select 5, and there's more than 5 Champions for Change out there. It's really just a bandwidth issue for us that we've always kind of done 5. We select 5 young people from across the country, and they're people that, not just people that we think are making a positive impact in their community. We're really looking for young people that are doing things that they can then spread. That you're doing something in your community that you can then, with some help from us, spread to other young people in your community, spread to other young people in other Native communities, spread to, the larger country as a whole. And so we're really kind of looking for young people that are doing things that they might not think are that important, but they're things that we see if we can help grow them, those activities can just spread throughout Indian country and the rest of the country. And that's kind of how we pick our 5 Champions for Change. And so I want to thank and congratulate Gabriella. Everyone want to stand up when I mention your name. Gabriella, Jovi, Sam, Josh, and Hanu. These are our 5 Champions for Change for 2023. And we're going to spend the next year really helping them grow their advocacy skills, helping them learn about policy and how to advocate for policy change, how to network, how to elevate their voices, and really help grow skills that they will then be able to take back into their communities and help spread the good work that they're doing, but also help them network across the country to other Native communities, but elsewhere, to Congress, the White House, federal agencies. We appreciate Darren Carrera from the White House being here to join us, and just grow the positiveness that's going on in Indian country and make sure people understand all the positive things that are going on in Indian country. So I really look forward to working with these champions over the course of the next year. The board works really closely with them. We have a youth board that works really closely with them. And so we're really excited. The next year's we think's got a lot to bring. They're going to be doing a bunch of meetings this week. They will be presented to the National Congress of American Indians tomorrow, right before lunchtime. And then tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at the Capitol Hilton, we'll be hosting a reception to honor Native youth and generally and the Champions for Change. So that'll be tomorrow at 6 for anybody who's able to make it. And I just appreciate everybody being here today. And we're going to be hearing from the champions shortly. And so thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Allison. We have seen the power in positive representation, and we've increased invisibility in so many spaces, from politics to science, athletics, education, literacy. Native people are disrupting the dominant and nearly invisible narrative of who we are. And we're joined here today by Angeline Bouye, who is Ojibwe, a Prince Medal winner, Morris Award winner, has her work listed in the Reese Witherspoon and Hello Sunshine Book Club as a young adult pick. Angeline is an instant #1 New York Times bestseller and will soon have her work featured on Netflix through President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's production company, Higher Ground. As Native people, when one of us succeeds, all of us succeed. Thank you, Angeline, for being the representation that our young people need. The Firekeeper's Daughter is a book about a youth who is an example of the power of young people and when they have the tools they need and drive that they have to transform their communities. Her next book, Warrior Girl Unearthed, will be released this year, and we look forward to your future works. Please join me in welcoming Angeline Bouye.
Buju Anin, Angeline Bully, Miskwa Makokwe, Nadishnakas, Makwa Dodam, Bawating and Donjaba, Chimagwech. Hello, everyone. I'm Angeline Bully. I'm Bear Clan. I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, the place of the rapids, and it's an honor to be here with you today. My life, I'm living this dream, and I am just so very thankful that I get to do something that I love, which is telling stories and connecting people and meeting so many people in our communities. I didn't start out to be a writer. I was always good at writing. But when you're a first generation college student, I think I got the message that perhaps I should major in something that would lead to a good paycheck. And writing was something that I didn't pursue it creatively at that time. I didn't pursue creative writing at that time. So I am a New York Times bestselling author, and my book, Firekeeper's Daughter, has been on the New York Times bestseller list for 31 weeks. Thank you. And it's won some incredible awards, and those things are meaningful to me. They're meaningful because, like you said, when one of us succeeds, all of us succeeds. And I had put pressure on myself that when you represent a marginalized community that hasn't had a voice, certainly in publishing circles, when there are stories about us, they tend to be written by people not from our communities, and there's so much that they get wrong. They focus a lot on poverty and issues that other communities face too, and they miss out on so much of the joy and love and connectedness. And I wanted to make sure that the stories I was telling focused as much on the wonderful parts of my community, in addition to talking about some unpleasant truths. So, how did this all start? Well, my book came out. I was 55 when I got my book deal, and it was a book deal in excess of $1 million. And that created a huge buzz about who is this person? Where did this story come from? And I was called an overnight success. Well, my story was 37 years in the making. So when I was a senior in high school, two really important things happened to me. First, it was the first time that I had ever read a book that had a Native main character. And it wasn't until I started reading it that I realized my absence in books that I had read before. Like, why wasn't there a Native character in books that, this was my first time reading it, and to realize that our stories weren't told. And then when I finished the book, it was a disappointing experience. The book perpetuated a lot of harmful stereotypes, and I remember just feeling less than satisfied with it. The other important thing that happened to me, a senior in high school, is that my best friend went to a different school than I did, and she told me about a new boy senior year in all of her classes. And she was being a good friend and looking out for me, and she said that he seemed like he might be my type, and did I want to meet him? And I, of course, said yes. And a few weeks later, she said, you know, I don't think he is your type. He doesn't play sports, and he hangs out with the really hardcore partiers. And I said, okay, yeah, that's not for me. And about a month before graduation, she came and told me, you'll never believe this, but there was a huge drug bust in their town, and it turned out that the new boy had been an undercover police officer. And I remembered thinking, I was quite the romantic, dreamy heart, and I remembered thinking, what if we had met and what if we liked each other? I was raised on Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys mysteries, so then I was like, what if it wasn't that he liked me, but he needed my help? And then I thought, why would some undercover drug investigation need the help of an ordinary 18-year-old Ojibwe girl? Well, that seed of an idea stayed in my mind and it just never left. I went on to college. I studied political science, business management. I got married, had kids. I started working for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe in Michigan. I ended up working for another tribal community before I ended up working for my own in Sault Ste. Marie. And I always worked with teens. Every position that I had, I found a way to, help out with after-school programs and summer programs, and really always wanted to be around our teens. And then I also, whatever job I did, I also wrote grants. No matter what my title was, I also wrote grants. And I started to work out the puzzle pieces for this seed of an idea that I had for this mystery thriller of this 18-year-old girl who is pulled into this undercover drug investigation. And I thought, okay, what if it was a federal investigation on a reservation? And what if the drug had some element to it that could be manipulated? And what if that had something to do, a cultural component to it? And what if this young woman knew about chemistry, but also knew about traditional medicines and was connected to everybody and everything? She actually would be the ideal confidential informant for this investigation. So I kind of had the bones for the story. But in my community, federal agents aren't necessarily the good guys. So what compelling reasons might she have to participate in this investigation? Maybe the loss of a loved one and a desire to protect her tribal community. But also, she realized that what the FBI was after involved something that had to do with her culture. And so she decides that she's going to run her own investigation parallel with the FBI's, and then she will decide what information she's going to share with them and what information she won't. Because at a certain point, she realizes that in addition to protecting her tribal community, she's also protecting Indigenous knowledge. And that's something that the federal agents did not have a right to. And so the story really took shape over so many years of thinking about it and working out how this might be plausible, how doing research. And I wondered, because I hadn't studied creative writing, my master's degree is in public administration, but getting back to my work experience and every job I've had of writing grants, I realized, wait, I think I'm a storyteller. It's just that I've been telling stories in 40-page proposals plus attachments, but every grant I applied for, I was I was trying to create a compelling narrative about my community and the issue that we were facing, why we picked that particular approach, how we were going to measure success, and why we should be trusted with the funding. And so I realized that even though I didn't have any training, a master's of fine arts or anything, that I had always been good at writing, and I understood the power of story. And so when I was 44, that's finally when I decided that I was going to try to write this story that had been in my mind since I was 18. And I realized I could try and write a really bad story and live with that failure easier than never ever trying, of having this dream and just having it be I always wished I could have done this, but I never even tried. I decided, no, I can live with, yeah, I wrote it and it was really bad. And so at 44, I had my sons were in high school, and my daughter was a preteen. And I remembered telling her my idea for the story and about this Ojibwe girl who witnesses a devastating murder and gets pulled into this investigation and wants to protect her community and get to the bottom of who's behind this deadly new drug that's just devastating her community. And my daughter said, "That sounds even better than Twilight," which for an 11-year-old is really high praise. So yeah, I started writing. I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote that first draft, and yes, it was horrible. And it also wasn't young adult. And I set it aside for a few weeks. I read it again, and I read it with brutally honest eyes. And I looked at what I had done that worked and what things I might need to improve upon. And so learning how to write dialogue, learning how to build tension in a scene, using more descriptors, learning about the hero's journey, all of these things I would research. I would reread my favorite books and see how those authors wrote dialogue or created tension in a scene. And then I would gear up and I would dive back into writing another draft. So when I started at age 44, I certainly didn't think it was going to take 10 years to finish a draft that could be published. I was only focused on the draft I was working on and how to make it better. So about midway through that, I had one child who loved Star Wars and one who loved Harry Potter. And I remembered thinking that it's kind of the same story. This average person gets this call to adventure and guided by a wise mentor enters this unknown world, faces a series of trials and tribulations, gains allies, makes enemies, and finally faces an adversary, the true adversary. And whether they're successful or not, sometimes they get what they thought they wanted, but it wasn't necessarily what they needed, or they don't get what they thought they wanted, but instead they find something even more, a need that they had. But regardless, when they return to the ordinary world, they're forever changed by this transformative journey that they've been on. So, and we see the hero's journey in so many of our popular movies and television. And I remember thinking that we, Ojibwe people, we have our hero stories, and Nana Bush or Nana Bosho, and he is this person that's on this journey, and he'll run into Rabbit, and then you learn, why Rabbit has floppy ears, or how Porcupine got its quills. And I remembered thinking about that, and then I saw something online, and I'm a visual person, so I saw the hero's journey, and it was like drawn as a circle, split into four pizza slices, and they had the plot points of the hero's journey around the perimeter. And right after that, I happened to be looking at something else, and I saw the Ojibwe medicine wheel that Keweenaw Bay has a really excellent one that they have online. And it, too, is a circle divided into 4 quadrants, and it includes our teachings about the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 traditional colors, 4 traditional medicines, all of these different teachings. And for some reason, I thought, if I overlaid this, I could tell the hero's journey from an Ojibwe young woman's perspective, and I can use the medicine wheel as a cultural framework for telling that hero's story. And when I had that eureka moment, I knew my book would be published, and I knew that it would resonate, at least with people in my own community. And that's exactly what's happened. After 10 years of writing and revising, revising is even more important than the initial drafting, because I had a mantra while I was writing, and it was, I write to preserve my culture, and I edit to protect it. So I really needed to decide what Indigenous knowledge I was going to share. And in telling a story about my community, what things I felt comfortable sharing with other people. So I finished my manuscript, and my experience is really the opposite of hurry up and wait. It was a very, very, very long time for like the on a roller coaster for that car to get to the top of that first biggest hill. But once it does, and it takes off, it has been a nearly 2-year, never-ending roller coaster ride for me. So I had a literary agent within 2 weeks, sold my book at auction after it being on the market for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks after that, I sold the film rights to the Obamas to turn my book into a Netflix series. All of these just incredible things. And so I never knew, when my best friend tried to hook me up with a new boy in town, that it would lead to being here with you today. But really what I want to share is that you never know where your dreams can take you. You never know what parts of the story are going to find their way to you, and how you can put those puzzle pieces together. I will say that we need your stories, and it's just such an honor to be here with you and be part of this event. So keep telling stories, and keep sharing the great things about our communities, because they are there. So miigwech, thank you. Oh, and I forgot to say, my second book, Warrior Girl Unearthed, comes out May 2nd. And if my first book was Indigenous Nancy Drew meets 21 Jump Street, my second book is Indigenous Lara Croft. But instead of raiding tombs, the main character is a 16-year-old who is raiding museums to bring home our ancestors' remains. So, yes. So I'm very excited. Of course, her heists don't go as planned, so that's, yeah.
So to honor you and all that you have done and all that you continue to inspire, Angeline, we just wanted to take a moment and recognize you in our cultural way.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angeline.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you. That was so inspirational, and I feel so proud to be Native. So the time has come to invite our youth to the stage. Our Champions for Change will be moderated by Charity Ropati, the Vice Chair of our Youth Advisory Board, as well as Kaliko Kalihi, the Chair of our Youth Advisory Board. So I invite you guys up to the stage right now.
Y'all good? How's it going, everyone? Real quick, can we give another round of applause to this amazing cohort of Champions for Change? As you can see, we have an impressive group of leaders with us today. Just to begin, though, Jovi, I'd like to start our conversation with you. You're working with preserving your native language. Languages are at the core of our identities as Native peoples. Within your work specifically, you've created an Apache language club and an advisory council. Can you share what motivated you to start the work and how you worked through any barriers that have arisen?
Yes, so, our ancestors have made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our language and culture. They died fighting it. And as an Apache, we're best known for our greatest warrior, Geronimo. Geronimo believed that we shouldn't be governed by any foreign people occupying stolen land. And so, one way how Geronimo fought back was hiding, fighting, and also speaking the language and not learning English. So the Apache language is a really, it's not a written language. We do have to use the um, Times New Roman Navajo font just to write it, but that is within the past 20 years, and it's still in the works today. And also with that federal recognition. So being a federal recognized tribe, White Mountain Apache tribe, we are meant to upkeep the language, culture, and the land. And so maybe Congress could ask one day, when we lose the language, when we lose the culture, and when our land starts dying, that should White Mountain Apache tribe even be federally recognized anymore? And so, in order for me to not make that come to a reality, is I have to do something about it. I have to go out into the community. I have to go speak to my youth. I have to go to the council, to our leaders, both in tribal, state, and federal offices. And so I am really, this is very emotional for me too, as well, because like my family, we were also victims of the boarding schools, and look on the Fort Apache Indian Reservation, White Mountain Apache tribe. We also have a boarding school there, and so we knew the effects of what boarding school brought upon to our elders, and the elders today still speak of it about the trauma they went through, and also with that, so working together with Native youth around my community to create our Distribuco Apache Youth Council, that is an advisory council on the preservation of the language and culture. And so what we do is try to go into the community, get the perspective from elders, ask them questions, storytelling, song and dance, which also goes to the Apache Language Club. And so from there, our Native youth and our community are able to be in a safe place to learn the Apache language and culture. And also within my school, we were so happy to have a curriculum created by youth and teachers, along with approved by the White Mountain Apache Tribal Council and the Distribuco Community School Board of Education. It is a curriculum that starts through kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And now that 3 main universities within the state of Arizona are now taking this as a credit. So we're very happy with that. And I think that went imposed kind of recently. And so right now I do not need to take like a foreign language course. I took one, but I also took Apache language, advanced Apache language, and Apache history. Those 3 were never offered 20 years ago. The Apache language course was offered I believe in the early 2000s with the new renovation of my high school, but also the advanced Apache language is one that I worked on. It offers, I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot. The advanced Apache language course is chosen for students within my school to, if they want to, but if not, they are obligated to maintain their same courses, like the ones that are directed under the Bureau of Indian Education and the Arizona Department of Education. And it's a lot of talking. I'm getting tired. I need more caffeine, but Yeah, that's where we started, and the Apache history class is to maintain the Apache lineage, the ancestral lineage of the Western Apaches. The Western Apaches are occupied within the states of Arizona and New Mexico. We do have affiliated tribes as a Western Apache, so we try to get a perspective from all the Apaches, especially during the annual Apache Alliance Summit. From there, the Apache Alliance Summit, we can gather the thoughts and where they stand on preserving the language and culture for as an Apache, because we do speak the same language. We're also kind of in the same area of language with the Navajos, and so sometimes when Navajos speak, I can understand them, and when we speak to Navajos, they understand us, and so yeah, it's really about it comes from the heart. And so knowing that my identity is the language, is the culture that my ancestors fought for me to speak the language without any barriers, without any laws, is something that I must do, something that we all must do together when we go home to our communities. We must fight and protect the language as it is our sovereignty. And when we depart here from Washington, D.C., please do what you can. Learn the language, protect it, and defend it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jovi, for that. Your work in educational autonomy is so phenomenal. And again, I just want to remind people, this is what it looks like when you invest in Native youth all across Indian country. At your age, you were able to develop scholarship that PhD students, try to do, and you were able to do that at your age. And I'm just so thankful for you and your work in educational autonomy and just kind of describing what it means when knowledge and language is extracted, and how that relates to the extraction of resources and land. All of that's connected. I'm really thankful for you. I want to redirect it to Honu. I got to know Honu these past couple of days, and all of us are like really close friends now. Honu is an amazing and fierce advocate fighting for Hawaiian sovereignty. They've stood at the base of Mauna Kea. And I wanted to ask you, can you share the importance of protecting Mauna Kea and what we can do to support you and the Kingdom of Hawaii?
Yes, thank you, Charity. Well, first and foremost, as Native people, we know that our connection to our land and our earth and our resources, our waters, is at the crux of who we are, because our land is our elder, it is our ancestor. And for my people, the Kanaka Maoli, Mauna Kea is the piko. It is the umbilical cord of our creation story. Mauna Kea is anchored into the earth by Papahanaumoku, which is Earth Mother. She is the tallest mountain from the seafloor to the sky, which is Wakea, which is Sky Father. And where the sky and earth meet, that's where all land was created in our Kumulipo, or creation story. So in protecting all sacred sites, it is very important, but this site was a big no-no. And the 30-meter telescope would not be the first telescope. I'll start there. It would be the 14th. And it's important to know that my family, and along with thousands of other Kanaka Maoli, since 2014, when this project was first projected, we have stood and opposed and have not consented to this project since the beginning. That's where my advocacy started, was in my family unit, as it always does, because we don't choose to be activists. We're fighting for our livelihoods, truly. And one of my favorite quotes from Mana Wahine, or an empowered woman from the movement, is that they thought they were building a telescope, and instead they awoke a nation. And that is exactly what happened on that mountain. There was so many professors from the University of Hawaii who opposed that telescope that they flew to Mauna Kea to block the construction, that they had an entire university on the base of Mauna Kea called Pu'uhuluhulu University, where they were teaching about food sovereignty, about herbs, about language revitalization. And that's actually where I was inspired to become a political science major in international relations. It was at that pico, of course, that I realized where my kuleana and where I was guided to be. And so what you would do, what I've learned from protecting Mauna Kea is aloha aina and aloha and kapu aloha. Aloha aina is loosely translated to the love for the land. like I said, we understand what you would do to protect your family. And Kapu'aloha was also birthed out of that, which is like based in Native Hawaiian ontologies, and also expressed through ceremony and protocol. Because that's another reason why Mauna Kea is so important. Just because it's not a built church doesn't mean that that entire mountain range isn't the sacred site itself. As Native people, we have a right to practice our religion wherever, whenever we want. It's our land. And so it's also, sorry, looking. I also was inspired. I was a transfer student to the UC system, which is a primary funder for the 30-meter telescope. And they still are, along with Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which is stationed in Stanford, and Caltech, along with a few other international organizations that have since dropped out because they realized this is unethical. So a few reasons why protecting Mauna Kea is important. Because we will fiercely fight for our family in all ways. And also it's important to acknowledge that capitalism and settler colonialism is constantly reinventing itself. And capitalism is now doing so through education. And as we know, is by providing jobs. I have done a lot of advocacy to the UC Regents and saying that we can't compromise needed resources like schools and healthcare for a telescope and jobs. Those are long overdue, especially in an illegally occupied nation. And the importance of another thing that I have learned or tried to advocate to the UC system is that if you care so much about your reputation, why not wise up and back down, you know? Listening to people. If you're constantly being told no, 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 and you have realized that you have upwards to $2.4 billion of sunken costs, that it's probably not a wise investment to devastate an entire mountain. And going back to that connection of what that devastation does, our land is healing for us as people, and that devastation that happens on that mountain is also directly impacting our people. That mountain also sits on top of a major aquifer. And their cultural impact statements and their environmental impact statements will say that everything is good to go. But natives, we know that that is not how it will go. And especially if you're a spiritualist, the herbalist will say that just from the construction alone, those frequencies will impact the la'au, or the plants that are on that mountain. And so protecting this mountain is not just environmental justice, it's social justice. It's intersectional justice because we can't have one without the other. And so that is why a lot of my advocacy is really focused or rooted and grounded in the oya i'o, or the absolute truth of our histories as an illegally occupied nation. And what I ask for you is to also stand firm in that truth. I mean, Native people, First Nations were also there with us on Mauna Kea. Kanaka Maoli were there with you for Dakota Access Pipeline, and First Nations were there with us. So this is not the first time, this is not the first ask, and I know that you already stand with us. I just ask that you continue to breathe life into it. And I know that it's easy, or we're constantly told that that people's eyes will glaze over, especially when we come into these spaces that are not built for us, that are not made for us. So I constantly ask that you stand firm in that truth, that we were illegally taken over on January 17th, 1893, and that statehood we did not consent to be a part of the United States, and that we will continue to stand firm in that truth to protect our Mother Earth in all capacities, because it's not just for Kanaka Maoli, it's for Indigenous people, it's for marginalized people around the world. And also that we can do better research, that we need to actually embolden and valorize ancestral knowledge and ike kupuna, because we know a whole lot more than we think. And I think that I will stop there. Mahalo.
Before we continue on, I just want to say mahalo ya'oi. I'm also Kanaka Maoli, and I've done a lot of work with Honu Aina. So a lot of the things that they've done has directly impacted my life and also just everyone back home in our home community. So very much uplifting their message of needing that solidarity between Native peoples. So mahalo for forwarding that as well. To redirect a bit, Gabby, this question is directed at you. As Honu Aina was pointing out, our lands maintain our connection to our identity as Native peoples and our connection to our ancestors. We must care for our lands, and in doing so, the land will care for us. So Gabby, this connection to land is something that has uplifted you too. Can you explain what this connection to land is for you and how it has helped you on your healing journey?
Yeah, of course. So, as Native people, our connection to our land is indescribable. Kind of as Jovi was saying earlier, there's lots of words in my Choctaw and my Navajo languages that are untranslatable. It's like these untranslatable words that express these big feelings, and that's kind of what it is to try and explain to people the connection Native people feel to our land. It's love, it's passion, it's drive, it's every single big idea that drives people to push forward is the connections we have to our lands. And so this drives my stewardship, it drives my ancestors' stewardship, it drives every single one of us in ways that we don't know about. And then more specificized, like towards me, like in my niche little group I have, at the height of the COVID pandemic, I was on the phone with my grandparents, and they were just telling me how they didn't have access to fresh produce. My grandma was just talking, and she was like, not thinking it would spark some crazy fire inside of me, but she was saying she wanted a strawberry because I was talking about how we had strawberries at home, and how she was like craving a strawberry, but she wasn't able to get any because the nearest local grocery store was miles and miles and miles away, and she wasn't able to get any of that, and it really pushed me and my family forward. We started a garden in our front yard, and we started with just a few plants, seeing if we could even do it. So it was like lettuce here and there, and then later when our plants started to grow, we started to plant more traditional plants. So we planted Navajo melon to honor my Navajo side, and then we planted Hopi beans, and we wanted to see all the things we can do with that. And then in that work, I found that these indigenous crops are the ones that actually use the least amount of water. They're the ones that are the best for our environment and the ones that are growing the best. The plants that were the strongest in my garden, they propagated seeds, and then I saved those seeds in little packets and I sent them off to the res, and my grandma was able to get her strawberries. She was able to find ways to mitigate the space between food sovereignty and food struggles that we're facing on our reservations. And then through this, though, when my crops weren't growing or things weren't happening, I fell into these weird episodes where I felt like empty almost. It was like hard to explain when like the land is dying around us. It hurts us as an Indigenous people. And then in one year, my mom likes to call it my trifecta. I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and ADHD, so triple trifecta, guys. But I was trying to find ways to heal these like struggles that I had, and a lot of the things that I was talking to like doctors about were these colonial ideas, and some of them helped, right? But a lot of them were rooted in things that I just needed to go back to my culture. And so I went back to the garden and started planting more. And then as my plant started to grow, I started to grow. My mom called on her Facebook. She would post all of her foods that we ended up getting from our like little foods, and she would go, Gabby Grows, and like she like made up my like Gabby Grows campaign, because it wasn't just me growing, it was our crops, and it was my culture, and it was a connection to all of these things that I struggled finding in Phoenix, especially. Growing up in a predominantly white area, it was really hard to feel a connection to my land, especially when other natives around me almost were embarrassed of their native heritage. And so finding that connection and then growing within, healing my depression and trying to mitigate the anxiety that comes with environmental anxiety, feeling you're not doing enough by just doing the littlest things. Like recycling, guys, it makes a really big difference. Like just putting like this, like the little plastic thing in the recycling bin, like your tiny steps you're making are gonna make a world of change for our 7 generations that are to come. And so through this, I found the love of gardening and getting active and all of this stuff. And then through my getting active, I found the love of yoga, and I'm becoming a yoga instructor. So if you guys are ever in Phoenix, come April, I can teach you a nice little yoga flow. I can coach you through that. But what really posed my question through all of this was, how can we expect things to grow if we're not growing in our environments, if the things surrounding us are stifling our growth, keeping us down? How do we expect to grow and to prosper and to propagate into these new seeds that we can spread with our culture and our community? Yeah, I'll keep it there. The little question in mind, how can we expect to grow if the community and the environment around us is not allowing that? Keep that in mind.
Thank you so much, Gabby. I love supporting like Native women and girls in STEM, and your ability to like grow plants and ecology is phenomenal. And again, these are things that like literal like master students and PhD students that I've seen try to actively do and fail. And instead of using that just for research, you've extended it and helped those in your community, your own grandmother. And we've seen how the pandemic has affected our rural communities all across the country, and I'm so proud of you. I also just want to note that Gabby is the youngest member in our cohort for this year's Champions for Change. I also saw them speak at the White House Tribal Youth Summit last year and moderate a panel on food sovereignty and talk about the work. So I'm really proud of you. I'm thankful to be in community with you, and I just wanted to highlight that before we moved on to the next question. So as we all know, Native youth face struggles of anxiety and depression, and more times than not, community violence comes and it shows all across Indian country. Joshua, I'm so proud of you. Joshua was able to give testimony this morning here at the White House and kind of explained his story on combating community violence back home in Minneapolis. I wanted to ask you, can you describe the community you come from, what work you do back home, and what support you feel like your people need?
Hello, y'all. I just want to introduce myself properly. My name is Joshua Jackson Morrison. I come from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Little Earth community. It's located in South Minneapolis. My family's from Red Lake, and I am Ojibwe. So the Little Earth community has been around for decades, I believe since '74. My family has been there the whole time since it was built. But yeah, so the Little Earth community is a great community, honestly. We've been dealing with problems for a while now. But it's not the people that are in it, it's the people that come into the community. So I would say the outsiders. They bring gangs, drugs, and that's it. But the gang violence is really what sticks out to me because it's starting to affect the youth. You know, they like, I'm sorry, y'all. So it starts with their family members, their older ones that that don't show them the right path of success. They only show them the path that, you know, gangs, drugs, you know, that's the easy way. But yeah. I'm sorry, y'all. But I just want to talk about a few examples that, you know, that shows that we deal with them problems. One example for the gang violence is when I was younger, I had a group of friends and like they decided to try to start their own gang. My parents were really strict on me, so they didn't like let me hang out with them all the time. So yeah, I was lucky to have the parents that'll keep me away from that. But them trying to start their own gangs, it eventually didn't work out. They disliked each other because they didn't decide the leader. So they started, I would say, beefing with each other. And yeah, eventually it grew into a bigger thing with multiple gangs. And this is where like the shootings started happening, the killings. One of the first killings that actually happened was, his name is Alex. He was a good football player. He was home. The Little Earth community was his home, and from what I know, he was standing outside of the apartment, and someone had walked up and shot him point blank. I think 6 times. And, you know, that guy came from up north down to the Little Earth community just to do that. So like I said, it's the people that come down into the community that bring the violence. A few other things is there was this 1 week, there was a shooting at least every day, just right outside my house. And one of them times, I had a friend, he was just in the wrong place, wrong time. The house that was shot up, he had got shot in the chest. Great basketball player, and I believe he was in the hospital for a couple months. But like, you know, this is the problems that we face, and you know, I'm gonna explain how it's leading to the younger kids. So this last summer, regular day at home, chilling, and you know, we heard these gunshots. Didn't think too much of it, and then we go outside, and you know, eventually we learned that it was these two younger kids, 13 and 12, that were shooting at each other, and they didn't. They ended up shooting a little girl. She was like 5. She got hit in the leg, so she survived. But like, you know, it just sucks to see that these younger kids only have that path and only see that path. They don't see no other path to success. And you know, one of the biggest things that I want to do is help them find that path of success. I don't have much more to say right now.
I just want to take a moment to just uplift you and say thank you so much for.
One more thing.
Yeah, of course.
So sorry, y'all, I forgot the last question.
Oh, no, it's not.
Okay, so some of the things that I think my community would need, the biggest thing actually is a gymnasium. So we have one, but it's like we can't practice in there, we can't go do activities in there. So I think one of the biggest things is a gymnasium. Most of the kids there, they all love sports. They all definitely have a future in sports. And speaking of the sports situation, I know this kid, really great kid, grew up with his older siblings, so I watched him grow up. And recently, there was this one morning he was walking to school, and because of his older family members that are in gangs, he was targeted. He got shot at, like with a whole clip. He didn't get hit, he ran, but like, you know, it just shows that that they target the younger kids in their family. So, yeah, that's it for me. Thank you all.
Yeah. Again, just wanted to take a moment to just uplift you and say thank you so much for being so honest and for sharing your story so openly. I know it is difficult, and I know that it does bring up a lot of heavy emotional baggage. But through the work that you've done with the Boys and Girls Club and through the youth that you service, through the work that you do, you're actively showing them a better pathway forward. So just wanted to say thank you for all that you do to be the role model for your community back home and for the youth. With that being said, I'm going to transition a little bit. So this question is going to be directed to you, Sam. Over the past 3 years, you've been working on the Hill. So can you share the Native representation that you see at the federal level, working on the policies affecting our people as Native peoples, and how we can continue to build a pipeline to increase that representation?
I appreciate the question. And before I even address any part of it, I just want to note how amazing it is, how personal all of the responses from all of the champions have been. And I feel like that work that gets us to a point of choking up is exactly why these folks up here, at least for my fellow panelists, are champions, because they take it so personally and it means so much to them. And it kind of ties into the answer that I'd like to give to the question, because when it comes to federal Indian law and policy, when you have a select handful of people, unfortunately just a handful of people who are from our communities, who have our backgrounds, who are engaged in that work, it means that it's only personal. It only cuts the deepest for a select number of people. And I don't mean that to degrade anybody else who's engaged in the work. I think that I'd like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, because I believe in the goodness of institutions, even if they have caused harm in the past. I believe in a positive future. I like to keep that outlook. But from my experience, there has only been a handful of folks who have those backgrounds who are able to make those changes. And to back it up even further, for me personally, I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. And the reason why I came out to DC and why I've been working where I've been working and went to school where I went to school is because I had an interest in getting involved in the rooms where it happens, right? Like, to steal that Hamilton line for a second. I really had an interest in it because I wanted to provide an equity of opportunity nationally, recognizing that Congress has plenary power over Indian affairs, and you kind of use that term, Indian affairs, in quotes. But recognizing that authority, I wanted to see why there still was an inequity of opportunity that allowed for food sovereignty to still not exist, why strawberries were so hard to find, why they might cost so much, or why communities might have to deal with an excess of gun violence, why communities might have to struggle through language revitalization and that preservation work. All of those tie back into an inequity of opportunity to preserve your languages, to have access to those crops, to be in a safer environment where you have a gymnasium. And a lot of those things, like it or not, can be traced back to policy in some form or fashion. And so I think to answer that question, and also tie it back into my role and what I've done and the way I see this changing, is promoting greater education of our civic institutions and the ways in which they have profound effects, real-world applications in our day-to-day lives, the ways in which they might be able to change a lot of these things that we're talking about that folks are handling within communities, but also to have these institutional partners who have a personal stake alongside everybody within all of our communities to effectuate those changes. And so, long way to say, I think that while there is only a handful of people who have those experiences who are working in these areas, we do need more, and the way to get to that point is through education, but it's also through mentorship. That's something that I didn't naturally find when I came out to DC. I had to search it out. You have to be purposeful with it from the person who's seeking that knowledge. But at the same time, for those folks who are already in those positions, and we had a couple of speakers earlier today talk about they've been in those positions, they want to give back to communities, allowing yourself to have 5 minutes to talk to a youth, to say, hey, look, I've been in that situation before, but I'm engaged in that work, and I want to help you out through it. I want to help show you how to craft a resume, or what it looks like to have a cover letter, and why those things are important. I'm willing to go through a mock interview with you, so that way you're in a better position to be involved in these institutions where those things are really taken at face value as if everybody has done them before. I was grateful to have a really supportive family, and I always like to shout out my mom and dad because I couldn't be here without them, and I couldn't be here without the support of my family and my friends who have all been great to me. But I know that that's not true for everybody. And so I think to have that mentorship from those folks who are already involved, to keep that door open, that's essential. That's essential, and that's why I wanted to be a part of the CHAMPS program, to put myself out there for folks who are interested in these areas, not only from within the community, but to sacrifice a portion of their time and of their life, of their energy and of their spirit, to get involved in an institution that wasn't necessarily designed with them in mind inherently, but explicitly has authority over everything that we care about. And so I think that there's a great opportunity for our youth to get involved in those institutions now more than ever. And I'd like to be a part of that change, and I'm grateful to be in company with folks who are engaged in these things from the community level. Because so often when you're in institutions, you see things from a 30,000-foot view. But you need to have those partnerships. As much as you want to yell at an institution and feel like the institution isn't listening to you, it's great to have those people on the inside who are trusted resources, whose work in those areas is as personal to them as it is to you. And I think that it's something that's incumbent upon all of our communities to promote, whether we're talking at a tribal level, at a state level, or a federal level, because it's personal to all of us. We've all got a stake in the game, no matter what we're talking about. If it's about codes for housing, or whether it's about how much it costs to get to a vocational school, whatever. All of those things have that nexus in policy, politics, and law, whether you like to admit it or not. And so I think that it's a responsibility for all of us to get involved with those changes and to put ourselves out there for our communities.
Yeah, thank you so much to Sam. I'm also from Anchorage, so it's really cool to see like another Alaskan kid from Anchorage. Sam also emceed at the Smokehouse Gala. I'm gonna brag about you a little more. Just yeah, they also emceed at the Smokehouse Gala, which is one of the largest elders and youth conferences nationwide. It was set in I think it was Anchorage, yeah, last year. They graduated from American University. Graduating college is a huge accomplishment, and now they work in Congresswoman Mary Peltola's office, and is I think is like the youngest staffer on there. So I'm really proud of you, and let's another round of applause to all the champions.
And I'm going to pass it over to Jasmine.
All right, thank you. What an inspiring panel discussion. I'm sure we can all agree that their future is incredibly bright. You know, getting the privilege and opportunity to listen and talk about preserving culture and language, protecting land and water, food sovereignty and wellness, giving our youth hope, and creating policy and making change from within. You know, I'm definitely inspired. My name is Jasmine Wildcat, and I've served on the Youth Advisory Board for the Center for Native American Youth since I was a champion for change in 2020. My experience as a champion has taken me to places I never imagined capable. To our 2023 class, welcome to our family. You have an advocate in each of us, and we are proud to call you our siblings. May you always have the strength and courage to continue to make change for our people. And when your voice shakes or when you doubt yourself, remember this moment. Remember your ancestors and your grandmother who always walked behind you. And remember the people in this room. We are all your advocates. So thank you guys for attending this public event. Please stick around to visit with Gabriella, Jovi, Sam, Josh, Hanu, Charity, Kaliko, and me. And don't forget to get a signed copy of Firekeeper's Daughter. So just a reminder, we would like to invite everyone to a reception we are hosting at the Capitol Hilton tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Northgate Grill. There we'll continue to celebrate the champions with the National Congress of American Indian Youth Commission. So prior to closing, we need to thank those who have worked tirelessly to ensure that we have a meaningful and transformative time. So the CNA staff, please rise. Cheyenne Brady. Is Cheyenne in here? Yay! Maria Samaniego. Anthony Temez. He's out there. Okay, Lauren Shad. Cheyenne Kippenberger. And of course, our executive director, Nikki Santos. Thank you all for your hard work. And I'd like to invite Novi Renzova back up to provide an honor song for the youth and invite you all to come up and shake hands with the champs. Thank you.